Hello guys, thank you for joining me in my very first YouTube video. Tonight I'm going to be reading you some stories from the Let's Not Meet Reddit. As I said before, this is my first YouTube video, so hopefully things will go okay. Why do we delay any further? Let's go ahead and jump into it. Just sit back, relax, close your eyes, and let the darkness take hold. Number 1. The reason why I won't go shopping after dark anymore. This happened when I was a bartender about 4 years ago, but I think about it often and it has changed the way I operate throughout life. I now refuse to go to any store alone after midnight. For the story's sake, I will tell you that I was 25 and an attractive slender blonde at the time. On a busy Friday night, I was bartending with the bar manager, and he had noticed that we were very low on some bar necessities after the dinner rush. Lemons, limes, bitters, that kind of thing. So I was sent out to go to a 24-hour grocery store down the road to pick up the odds and ends that we would require to get us through the weekend. I picked up everything that was asked of me without trouble at the store until I got to the liquor aisle. There were two country-looking guys that were probably around my age in the aisle, and they were staring at me and whispering to each other in a way that made me feel uncomfortable, as I assumed they were making comments about me. All pretty innocent so far. Before they could approach me, I grabbed what I needed and very quickly and power walked to the self-checkout. I really booked it out of there because when you're a bartender, it's kind of like you're on stage and are required to be charming and interact with people that you otherwise absolutely wouldn't be able to tolerate unless you were getting paid to. Thus why I'm not bartending anymore. I get to the self-checkout, and hot on my tail are the two guys. I'm scanning my stuff and they use the scanner station next to me. I get a better look at them now that they're right next to me. One is taller, muscular, and average looking. The other one is shorter and more plump. They both look dirty and their eyes were completely bloodshot. Not sure if they were high on something or had already been drinking for a while. They continued to stare at me and our eyes awkwardly met, so I did the pleasant Midwesterny thing to do and flashed them a quick half-assed closed-lipped smile to be polite. This taller one starts trying to talk to me. "Hey, looks like you're getting ready to party, huh?" I replied with something like, "Yeah, something like that. It's not for me, though." They walk closer to me and ignore their responsibilities to scan their items. "Oh, must be for your boyfriend, huh?" I flash the awkward tight-lipped smile again and roll my eyes slightly. Like, this is your hint that I'm not interested, fellas. The taller one continues to try to talk to me. "You could come hang out with us tonight. We could show you a real good time if you know what I mean." I reply with, "No thanks, I'm good. I have plans already." Well, the tall one starts to get upset. His moves aren't working like he'd hoped and starts using a more threatening tone. He moves very close to me. Like 2 inches away, but I ignore him, staying focused on the scanner. I don't think he'd showered in a few days by the smell of him. He gets a little louder and says, "I see how it is. You probably only fuck doctors and rich men like that. You think you're too good for us. We can show you that you aren't. We can teach you a lesson." Now, I'm not sure in what context he meant, but it definitely wasn't good. Still not looking at him, I turn away so my body is blocking his view of my purse, which I set on the scanner to grab my 4-inch pocket knife out and slide it up my jacket sleeve in case I need to protect myself, acting like I'm searching for my wallet. I do this, however, in view of the self-scan worker standing at her podium and looking at her with wide eyes, trying to communicate that I do not feel safe and I might need help. I turn back to the machine and slide my card to pay, while the creepy hostile guys are practically standing on top of me. The machine malfunctions and starts beeping. The lady worker comes over immediately and the guys stand next to me to change their expressions from I'm planning to torture you for a couple days and toss your body into a creek, to just your friendly good old country boys making polite conversation over here. They actually tried to act like I knew them and we were friends so the worker wouldn't be alerted to their ill intentions. They tried joking with the worker, saying I was stealing something and that's why the machine went off. The worker definitely was not buying it. She was a 6+ foot tall woman with some muscle on her, by the way. I wouldn't mess with her on my best day. Anyway, she pressed a few buttons on the screen, shooting the guys a very unimpressed look when they were trying to act charming, and cancels the order completely. She turns to me and says, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. This machine seems to not be working correctly. Why don't you go gather your things and I will ring you up at an actual register?" She puts her hand on my back and gives me a wide-eyed look like I gave her a minute earlier, letting me know that she sees that I'm in danger. I pick up my things to follow her to a register that is near the security office. The guy lingers around the self-scan, still glaring at me, and eventually complete their purchase. But stand next to the exit, assuming they are waiting on me. I felt like I would be walking to my death if I made my exit in that moment. The worker keeps a close eye on the guys and scans my items. As she's scanning, she tells me there really wasn't anything wrong with the machine I was using. It just misread my credit card. She said, "I had a bad feeling about those guys from the moment they walked in, and then I saw them getting aggressive towards you. I already rang security to be ready to walk you to the parking lot and make sure you left safely when you were ready to leave. Then I saw you take that knife out and put it up your sleeve, getting ready to protect yourself. Good girl. As much as I'd like to see you show them they picked the wrong chick to mess with, I'm glad I was able to pull you aside and make sure you were safe. I see them waiting by the door for you. I'll just keep pressing buttons on the screen and act like I'm having trouble with your order until they give up and go outside. Our security officer and I are both still going to escort you to your vehicle when you leave." I thought to myself, this woman seriously deserves a raise. I thanked her over and over again and told her what they said to me, and I was getting afraid because I don't know what these guys are capable of. As I'm talking to her, my bar manager calls me to see what's taking so long. I explained what was happening, and he obviously very concerned and ready to come up there himself and kick some ass. A sweet sentiment indeed. By the time I hang up, the guys had given up and walked out to the parking lot. The worker said to give it a few minutes because she had a feeling they may still be in the parking lot waiting for me to walk out and see which vehicle was mine so they could follow me. My instant thought was, no way, they have to be gone by now. I was wrong. The worker and security guard escorted me out as it was after midnight. You can imagine how empty the parking lot was. Towards the back of the lot, there sat an old big pickup truck running with the lights on pointed towards the store. It was a huge parking lot, and it wouldn't have made sense for them to initially park like that, so I'm assuming they moved the truck to sit that way so they had a full view of when I exited the store to go to my vehicle. It was like being stalked by very hungry lions. When I unlocked my car and they saw me, the worker and the guard were looking directly at them, and that I wasn't getting in my car until we watched them leave. They then peeled out of the parking lot. I mean, they seriously did a burnout to establish that they were pissed and trying to intimidate us or something. Aw, poor creeps didn't get their way, boo-hoo. I thanked the worker and the guard over and over again, as I'm certain they had just saved my life, or at least saved me from having to live with whatever those guys were planning on doing to me. I did write a long letter to the store manager and to their corporate location describing how their employees protected me and how grateful I was. I really hope that earned her a promotion, bonus, or a raise. She didn't know me at all and was ready to protect me, which really wasn't her job, but she did it anyways. Needless to say, I don't go late night shopping by myself anymore. Never will again. Number 2. Some old woman stood in my flat right next to the shower curtain. This happened a few years ago in my old one-person flat. Had a strange feeling that something wasn't right for a few days. Like I was sure that food in the fridge was less than what I put back the last time. I found pillows from my couch on the floor, stuff like that. I lived alone back then, so there wasn't anyone else with access to my flat, or so I thought. Well, one night I woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning, sweating, and even though I didn't remember, I was sure I'd woken up from a nightmare, since I was drenched in sweat. I decided to take a shower, so I put my phone in the bathroom for music, turned on the water, and enjoyed my shower. A few minutes in, I heard the door move. I never close it, but it still never moves. I took a look at the shower curtain and saw a shadow against it, and a look at my phone confirmed there was someone there, since I could clearly see a reflection in my screen that showed someone was standing next to the shower curtain. It took a lot not to scream and keep acting like it didn't notice anything, while silently taking the shower head off the holding and turning the water all the way to hot. I'm still kind of impressed of that quick thinking. Our water got really hot when you cranked it all the way to hot, and a few seconds later steam was raising and the water hurt my feet flowing next to the drain. I turned around, ripped open the shower curtain, and held the shower head right at the person behind. It was a woman. She screamed in pain. I whacked her in the face with the shower head and jumped out of the shower and ran to the door. Taking the key out of the lock and locking it, it closed behind me. A little later, she started to bang on the door, but the door didn't give. Thank God for quality German work. I called the cops and went to the kitchen to get my big kitchen knife, just for safety. I felt like my throat was closing up when I saw it missing, and realized there's only one place it could have possibly be right now. The police came and arrested the woman, who turned out to have been the former person living in the flat and was evicted after not paying rent. Seems she made a copy of the key and came into the flat when I was at work and sometimes at night. It's possible that what woke me up in the first place was her, and honestly, I don't even want to think about it. Ever since then, I always insist that the locks are changed when I move into a new place. Number 3. To the cop who broke into my house at 2 a.m., let's not meet. So a few years ago, I lived in one of the most beautiful yet crime-ridden cities in America. At this time, I lived upstairs in a building with 4 apartments. The building layout is relevant, so I'll explain. It's a square building with 2 apartments upstairs and 2 downstairs. In the front of the house were 3 doors. 2 led to the downstairs apartment, and the middle door opened up to a stairway. At the top of the stairway was a landing where mine and my neighbor's door were located. We upstairs tenants rarely used the front door unless to get the mail, because our parking was in the alley behind the house, and we had our own individual entrances there. I should also note the door at the bottom of the front of the stairs was always locked, even though we also had a solid front door that led directly to our apartments. If you didn't know the building, you might assume the middle door led straight to an apartment and not a staircase. Anyway, so this all happened when I, 30-year-old female, was about 24 and living on my own with my two large but super friendly pit bulls. The other 3 apartments were all occupied with people who went to the nearby art college. This happened the first week of school break, so everyone had gone to their home to visit their family and whatnot. Anyways, it was about 2 a.m. and I had just gotten into bed when my dog started getting antsy and running from my bedroom to the front door. I wasn't expecting company, so I decided to look out the peephole. No one was there, and the motion sensor light that goes off when someone gets to the top of the stairs hadn't come on. I calmed the dogs, though they wouldn't take their attention off the door, and went back to bed. A minute later, my dogs were up and whining at the door again. WTF, I'm so tired and want to sleep. I decided to investigate, thinking maybe a mouse or a rat had somehow gotten into the front hallway and the dogs could smell it or something. So I unlocked my front door. At the bottom of the stairs and making his way up towards me was a police officer with his head down and trying to silently creep up the stairs. Through the crack in my door, I yell, "What the fuck is going on? Why are you in my building?" Meanwhile, my dogs start barking behind me, probably because they could tell how nervous and startled I was. He stops creeping and looks up the stairs towards me. I'm not sure he could see me because my lights were off and the motion light hadn't come on yet. This guy looks so startled and so surprised, like a kid caught red-handed stealing a cookie from the cookie jar. It takes him a few seconds to answer me, and he says something along the lines of, I noticed a backyard fire at this address that was creating too much smoke. So I say, there's no one having a bonfire here, and if there was, why did you decide to come into my house instead of ringing the doorbell? I'm pissed and scared. Do you see any smoke around my house? Why didn't you just drive down the alley behind the house to check the backyard? By the time I finished the questions, he'd backed down the few steps and made it up. He'd made it up and was shutting the door while saying, sorry. His behavior was so weird and not like all the pompous, more confident way most police officers in my area behave when they think they get to flex their badge. I wait a minute by my door to make sure he's not coming back and grab the dogs and take them to lock the bottom door, and then make sure that my apartment is thoroughly deadbolted, chained, and the knob is locked. I went to my back patio and looked down on where we have a fire pit, tiki torches, grill, etc., and none of them had been used for weeks. Not only that, but there was no smoke anywhere. None of the people on my block that night had any kind of grill started or backyard fires. There wasn't even a smell of smoke, let alone smoke thick enough to warrant the cops coming by. I have no clue what that cop was talking about. Unfortunately, it was too dark to see what he really looked like aside from tall, white, or get a badge number. And by the time I finished inspecting my backyard for smoke and went to see if I could get the license plate off his cruiser, he was gone. The next day I checked to see if the lock on my front door was broken, because how was he able to get in if the door was always locked? I make sure every time I get the mail, because I have diagnosed OCD. There were scratches all over the lock as if someone had been picking at it. It was a fairly new lock, so the scratches had to have been recent. I called the local precinct and asked if they had a call about my address. They confirmed what I thought. They didn't send anyone out here last night. I ended up asking them to send someone out to take a report. None of the officers showed up matched what little I saw of the guy from the night before. Of course, no prints were found and nothing ever came of it. Until this day, I'm terrified to call the police to my house in case he shows back up. I shudder to think what the guy's real motivations were and what would have happened if I didn't have my wonderful dogs there to protect me. So, Officer McCreepy, that's not me. Number 4. The stalker who watched me through my windows and came into my apartment might be back in my life. 3 years ago, I was living with my then boyfriend in a one-bedroom apartment in a little mountain town. It was half a basement unit, so the bottom of all of our windows were level with the ground outside. It was also an older apartment, and not all the windows could fully lock. One day, my boyfriend comes home from work while I'm laying on the sofa and immediately runs up to the window near me and looks out of it frantically. He then goes to look out every other window in the house, then walks around the house outside looking in the windows. When he comes back from this confusing exploit, I ask him what the fuck is going on and why he's being a spaz. I think I just walked up on a dude looking in the window at you. He took off as I walked up, he tells me. This was, naturally, very unsettling, but after discussing it and considering the time of day, it was about 2 p.m., and the number of people out and about around the complex at the time, we came to the conclusion that it was just a curious neighbor or someone passing by happening to glance in. With that, we forgot about it. if that was only the end. For the next couple months, odd stuff happened here and there. Someone would knock on the door occasionally, then when I went to answer, no one was there. I'd find things in my apartment that I wasn't familiar with, or things like clothing items would vanish. I didn't really think twice about any of it until one night. My boyfriend and I were arguing around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were being a little loud. We were standing in the kitchen face to face. His back was to an open window with the blinds halfway up, and I was facing it. Amidst our arguing, I glanced behind him at the window, thinking I saw the reflection of my face in it. The window was open. It wasn't my face. There was a man with his face pressed almost against the window screen watching us. Given the fact that we were arguing and it was late, I thought for a moment it might have been a concerned neighbor walking up to the window to speak to us. A main walkway for the complex is right on the other side of the window, so I spoke to him. "Hello? Can I help you?" I asked a little aggressively, thinking the neighbor was intruding on our privacy. He responded to this by staring, unwavering and cold, right at me. His face did not change expression. He did not blink or move. He just looked right at me, a way I've never been looked at before or since. In this instant, I also realized that because of the window being level with the ground, the only way this man's face could be where it was if he was laying on the ground outside of the apartment, or crouched and contorted to look into the window. My heart sank. I buried my face in my boyfriend's chest and closed my eyes in fear. My boyfriend, up to this point, thought I was messing with him. When I buried my face in my chest, only did he say, "Is there really someone at the window?" I whispered yes to him. He felt my fear and took a moment before he turned around. By the time he did, the man was gone. It was at this point I started to think about all the odd little occurrences that I'd been experiencing. I assumed the worst. I filed a police report with his description, and my brother loaded my apartment up with weapons to protect me, or at least inform this peeping Tom that I was armed. After that night, myself, my boyfriend, and my brother were on high alert. There were a couple times when my brother came over that he saw a sketchy dude hanging around, and even one time saw him at my window. He tried to follow him discreetly, but the guy took off running as soon as my brother stepped in his direction. The last night I had an experience with this man, I was sitting home alone on my sofa. My boyfriend was at work at a restaurant about 2 blocks away. He had picked me up from work an hour earlier. We had sat on the sofa together a little while when we got home. Then he kissed me and left for work, locking the doors behind him. After he left, I continued to sit on the couch on Reddit for a while in silence. After about an hour of me sitting there in silence, I heard a door creak open. It's a small apartment, so to see the bedroom and bathroom doors from the couch, all I had to do was lean a little to the left. I assumed it was one of my cats coming out of my bedroom, so you can imagine my shock when I lean over and see the door that's opening is the door to the water heater closet / small storage space. I look to my right and see both my cats sleeping soundly at the other end of the couch. I look back at the door and it's still creaking open very slowly. It opens enough for me to see it, a set of fingers wrapped around the door, easing the door ever so gently open as quietly as possible. That was going to be a no from me, dog. I ran my ass barefooted out the door, into the snow, and down the street to my boyfriend's work. I called the cops when everyone was back to check out the apartment. He was, of course, gone. After that, my boyfriend and I packed our shit, went to stay with my parents, and 6 months later moved 1,000 miles away from that town, and that was the end of it. I initially found this sub around the time that I was trying to find other stories similar to mine, or people to talk to who had experienced something like this. I had intended to write my story here eventually, and I figured after this week's events I had to. I live 1,000 miles away from where all this happened, so part of me thinks there's no way this person could have found me, but last week I heard a knock at the front door of my apartment. I was expecting a package, so I figured it was the delivery driver and didn't answer. I'd go get the package later. Then they knocked again and again. The third one made me feel uneasy, so I waited a good 20 minutes to check the door. When I did, there was no package, no note, nothing. Someone was just knocking. Although it made me uneasy, I didn't initially think back to my stressful experience in my last town. Then 2 days ago, I went out to get groceries. I have a little patio and I go out there in the mornings to just chill or check on plants a lot, and I've been known to leave it unlocked in the day on accident. Never thought of it as a huge deal. Until I came home from the store 2 days ago, and the deadbolt to my apartment was locked. The deadbolt that can only be locked from the inside of the apartment, period. I assumed someone was robbing me because I dumbly left the patio unlocked. I called my sister, I called my current, new boyfriend. I waited for people to be with me, and I went into my apartment through the sliding glass patio door. Nothing was out of place, nothing of value was taken. At this point, my heart sank. Nothing was touched, nothing stolen. Someone was inside my apartment just because they wanted to be inside of my apartment. I told my boyfriend about my stalker and that he's not taking shit lightly like my past boyfriend. I filed a police report. We checked for recording devices and cameras. He put a Nest camera up all over the place, and we're on high alert. I really truly hope this is a coincidence, but if this man really followed me across multiple state lines, there's no one on this earth I'm less interested in meeting. Number 5. I was stalked in a grocery store. This happened when I was about 18 or 19. I'm now 21, and I'm still very curious what this creepy man wanted. I went to the grocery store with my mom in the middle of the day, so it was pretty crowded there. When we first walked through the door, I noticed that this man wearing paint-splattered clothes standing there talking to some other guys, and he was staring at me as I walked by. I didn't think anything of it because I'm used to guys being creepers by now, and I was with my mom, so what's he gonna do? Well, after about 15 minutes of us doing our shopping, I noticed we crossed paths a few times with the man I first saw when we walked in. Again, I didn't really think much of it, but I just thought he was shopping like the rest of us. But then it got to a point where I started seeing him too often. Like every single aisle we walked down, he would come down as well. So my creeper radar went off and I began to pay more attention. I noticed this man had no cart, no basket, not even one item in his hands, and we had been shopping for at least 20 minutes by now. I also noticed every aisle we went down, about 20 or 30 seconds later, he would be right behind us and stop maybe 15 feet away, grab a random item off the shelf, and glance back and forth from the item he was holding to us. Once we would begin walking to the next aisle, he would put the item back on the shelf and continue to follow us, never once keeping any items he had grabbed. After about 3 aisles of this behavior, I decided I wasn't overreacting, and I told my mom. I whispered it to her that I think this man is following us, and she casually glanced over and didn't say anything. The next aisle, he was there again. I pointed it out to my mom a second time and told her this is the 4th or 5th aisle. He's directly followed us now without getting any items. This time she definitely noticed it and was weirded out, but continued on as normal. Every new aisle we would walk down, he would follow, and I kept doing the same weird thing by grabbing random items and immediately putting them back as soon as we started walking. We just kept whispering to each other how creepy it was getting, but didn't know what else to do. We got onto the fruit and vegetable section and don't notice him follow us to that area. After about 2 minutes, we notice him in the corner looking at and holding the coconuts and staring at us. Like, really? I know you're not here to buy coconuts. Just stop. He wasn't even trying to be discreet anymore. So we finally finished our shopping and go to get in line. We noticed him exit the store. Never once bought a single item, and we were there for an hour. We started to devise a plan to escape without seeing us, just in case he was outside waiting for us. The line is pretty long, so it takes us about 10 minutes to get to the front. Just as we are loading our groceries back into the cart, we notice him walk back inside and stop and scan the area. He makes direct eye contact with me, smiles, and just walks into the store and down one of the aisles. We grab the rest of our bags and walk outside as fast as we can, hoping we would be faster than him, as we didn't see where he went once he walked back inside. We left out of a different exit than he walked in, and as soon as we got outside, he was there, walking directly towards us. I instantly froze in fear because I was so scared. My mom put her hand on my back and gave me a little shove and told me to go directly to the car and get inside and lock the doors while she loaded the groceries. As soon as she was finished and got in the car, she said she saw him get into his truck and he was just sitting there waiting. We began driving home, and of course he began following us. My mom started to speed up, and as soon as we went around a turn and he lost sight of us, she pulled into a random gated parking lot and we hid there as he drove by. We waited about 5 minutes to make sure he didn't see us or come back, and we went home. I'm not really sure what he was planning on doing, but whatever it was, let's please not meet again. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. Please share your thoughts and comments on how I can get better and what stories you would like me to read from here on out. Remember to like and subscribe, and remember, when you close your eyes, let the darkness take hold.